See you at his funeral tomorrow. My wife was sitting across from him at our kitchen table. Neither of them knew I was standing just inside the garage door. For a second, I honestly wondered whether I had heard him wrong. I was 66 years old, and my hearing wasn't what it used to be. Too many decades around impact wrenches, air compressors, and diesel engines had left me asking people to repeat themselves more often than I liked. But there was nothing wrong with my hearing that afternoon. Ryan's voice came through the narrow opening as clearly as a radio beside my ear. Karen lowered her voice. Stop saying things like that. I'm not joking. My fingers tightened around the metal door handle. I'd left physical therapy 20 minutes early because my right knee had swollen up like a grapefruit. The therapist wanted me to stay and ice it, but I told her I had frozen peas at home in a recliner that didn't smell like disinfectant. Normally, I would have stopped at Bass Pro Shops on Campbell Avenue for fishing line and a new thermos. Ryan knew that. Everybody in the family knew I drove down to my cabin near Table Rock Lake most Friday mornings before sunrise. That was probably why he felt safe talking in my kitchen at 3:20 in the afternoon. Karen's chair scraped against the tile. What exactly did you do? Ryan let out a slow breath, like she was the one making the conversation difficult. I made sure the truck won't get him all the way down the hill. My left hand reached for the wall. My knee hurt, but that wasn't why I needed support. Fix it, Karen said. It doesn't work that way. You go outside right now and undo whatever you did. Ryan laughed once, no humor in it. He checks that truck every week. If I go crawling underneath it again, somebody might see me. Karen's voice dropped until I could barely hear her. You said you were only trying to scare him. I said what you needed to hear. That sentence did something to me the first one hadn't. The first was a threat against my life. The second told me my wife had known enough to be scared before I walked in. I pushed the garage door open another inch. Ryan sat with his back to me, wearing the navy polo shirt I'd bought him for a job interview 2 years earlier. He had one elbow on the table and a coffee mug in his hand, calm as a man discussing the weather. Karen faced me, but her eyes were fixed on him. Her skin had gone pale around her mouth. What happens when the police investigate? She asked. They won't. Old truck, old driver, bad road. My truck was a 2008 Ford 150 with nearly 200,000 miles on it, but I maintained it better than most people maintain their homes. I bought it back when Mercer Auto and Towing still had 12 employees and a waiting list for transmission work. That Ford had hauled parts, toolboxes, stranded motorists, and more than one Christmas tree. Ryan knew that because I taught him how to change the oil on it when he was 17. He had complained the whole time. Daniel notices everything, Karen said. Not anymore. The words landed harder than I expected. Ryan continued. He forgets where he puts his glasses. He takes pills for his knees. Half the family already thinks he's slowing down. I almost stepped into the kitchen then. I wanted to grab him by the collar and put his face against the table. At 50, I might have done it. At 66, with one bad knee and a hand that went numb after gripping a wrench too long, I knew exactly how that would end. He'd deny everything, call me confused, and tell people I'd attacked him. Worse, whatever evidence existed would disappear before I could prove a thing. Karen pressed both hands against the tabletop. I never agreed to this. You signed enough papers. What papers? The insurance forms, the property documents, all of it. I signed loan applications. Ryan leaned closer to her. If you call him, I'll tell the police you helped me. Then you can explain why your name is on everything. Karen stared at him. I waited. 5 seconds, 10. I waited for her to shout my name. She didn't. That silence hurt in a different way. Ryan had been 14 when Karen and I started dating. His father, Michael, lived down near Branson, and their relationship had already gone sour. I never tried to replace Michael. I only tried to give Ryan some stability. I paid part of his community college tuition. I gave him a job sweeping bays at my shop, then taught him basic repair work. When he got arrested for driving drunk at 24, I found him an attorney. When his boat detailing business failed, I covered 3 months of rent because Karen was afraid he'd lose his apartment. Every time I drew a line, Karen asked me to give him one more chance. And every time I did. Standing in that garage, I finally understood what all those second chances had taught him. Not gratitude. Permission. I eased the door shut without letting the latch click. Then I backed toward my Buick, moving slowly because my knee had started to shake. Outside, the October air felt cool against my face. A school bus groaned to a stop at the corner. 2 houses down, somebody was using a leaf blower. Ordinary sounds. Ordinary afternoon. I sat behind the wheel but didn't start the engine. My hands rested on the steering wheel. Call the police, I thought. Then another thought followed. Tell them what? That I overheard a conversation nobody else would admit happened? Karen might tell the truth, or Ryan might frighten her into denying it. If he realized I'd heard him, he could remove whatever he'd done to the truck and destroy everything else. I drove 2 blocks to a diner near West Chestnut Expressway. The waitress knew me and brought coffee without asking. You look tired, Mr. Mercer. Physical therapy. She nodded sympathetically. That'll do it. I waited until she walked away, then called Jake Holloway, the man who now managed my old shop. He answered on the second ring. Hey, boss. Don't call me that. You bought the business. You still own the building. Close enough. Jake, I need a flatbed at my house tonight. He paused. What happened? I don't know yet. I need the Ford picked up without starting it. Another pause, longer this time. What time? After 1, no flashing lights. Take it to your lock bay. You want me to inspect it? No. Load it, secure it, and don't touch anything underneath. His voice changed. Daniel, are you in trouble? Yes. That was all I gave him. My next call was to Michael Collins. Michael and I had never been friends. We'd shaken hands at weddings, funerals, and one painfully long Thanksgiving dinner. But he had spent 40 years working on diesel trucks, and for all his faults, I had never known him to lie about a machine. He answered with television noise in the background. Daniel, my truck is being brought down to you tonight. What for? I need you to inspect the brake system in the frame. Why me? Because I trust your eyes. He went silent. Then he asked, Is this about Ryan? I looked through the diner window at traffic moving along the road. I'll explain after you see it. Michael exhaled slowly. All right. When I returned home, Ryan was gone. Karen stood at the kitchen sink with her back to me. How was therapy? She asked. Painful. She nodded but didn't turn around. I gave her every opportunity to say something. I set my keys down, opened the refrigerator, filled a glass with water, stood there long enough for the silence to become uncomfortable. Finally, she said, I have a headache. I'm going upstairs. All right. That was the moment I knew I couldn't protect both my marriage and the truth. Not if Karen refused to help me. At 1:52 that morning, Jake rolled a flatbed into my driveway with the lights off. We pushed the Ford far enough to load it without starting the engine. Before he left, I placed the keys inside an envelope on the passenger seat. On the front, I wrote, Michael, check underneath before you call me. A gift from your son. Asterisk, asterisk. Jake looked at the note, then at me. You sure about this? No, I said, but take it anyway. I didn't sleep after that. At 4:47 a.m., my phone rang. Michael's name appeared on the screen. When I answered, his voice sounded strained. The brake line was only the beginning, he said. There's something else under this truck, Daniel, and I think Ryan's been following you for weeks. What did you find? I asked. For a moment, Michael didn't answer. I could hear the faint hum of fluorescent lights on his end of the call, along with the metallic clink of something being set down on a workbench. The rear brake hose has been cut, he said finally. Not all the way through, just enough to weaken it. I sat up on the edge of the bed. What does that mean? It means it might hold while you backed out of the driveway, maybe even through town. But once you started braking hard on those hills near the lake, the pressure could have finished the job. He said it like a mechanic, plain and exact. That almost made it worse. I pictured the road south of Springfield before sunrise. The long grade, the curve near the county line, the guardrail with nothing but trees beyond it. I had driven that route so often I could name every gas station and diner without looking. Don't touch anything else, I said. Daniel, there's more. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. Michael continued. There's a magnetic tracker attached behind the rear frame. Small black unit. Easy to miss unless you know where to look. The tracker? Looks like one. I haven't pulled it off. Leave it exactly where it is. I took 3 pictures from different angles. Good, now stop. Michael gave a dry little laugh. You still sound like a shop owner. I sound like a man who doesn't want evidence ruined. The words came out steadier than I felt. I called Jake next. He was already awake, waiting at the shop in Springfield for instructions. The truck had been delivered back from Branson on the same flatbed after Michael's inspection, and Jake had locked it inside the rear service bay. Don't raise it, I told him. Don't wipe anything. Don't even lean against it. You calling the police? Yes. That was the first time I said the decision out loud. It made everything real. By 5:30, I was sitting at my kitchen table with both hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. Karen was still upstairs. The house looked exactly the same as it had the day before. The mail stacked by the fruit bowl, a half-finished grocery list under a magnet, her reading glasses beside the sink. But it no longer felt like my home. I called the Springfield Police Department and explained that I had reason to believe someone had intentionally damaged my vehicle. I kept it simple. The dispatcher asked where the truck was, whether anyone had driven it, and whether the suspected person was inside my house. No, I said, he doesn't live here. Do you feel safe where you are now? I looked toward the staircase. I'm not sure. An officer came first, followed about 40 minutes later by Detective Elena Torres. She was a compact woman with dark hair pulled into a low ponytail, and the kind of calm expression that made you choose your words carefully. We met at Mercer Auto and Towing just after 7. Jake unlocked the rear bay and lifted the overhead door. My Ford sat under the white shop lights, dust still along the wheel wells. One dead leaf caught beneath the windshield wiper. Torres stopped several feet away. Who touched the vehicle after it was removed from your property? Jake loaded it, I said. Michael inspected it visually in Branson. He took photographs but left the damaged areas alone. She looked at Michael. You're the biological father of the person Mr. Mercer suspects? Michael's jaw tightened. Yes. That may matter later. For now, tell me exactly what you did. Michael walked her through every step. He didn't embellish, didn't defend Ryan. He explained where he stood, what light he used, and how he spotted the partial cut. A crime scene technician photographed the truck before removing the tracker. Another officer documented the brake hose. Torres turned to me. Now tell me what you heard. I repeated the conversation from the kitchen. Every line I could remember. She took notes without reacting. When I finished, she asked, "Did you record any of it?" "No." "Did your wife hear it?" "Yes." "Will she confirm it?" I looked toward the open bay door. "I don't know." Torres closed her notebook. "The statement is important, Mr. Mercer, but physical evidence and digital records will carry more weight. Don't confront your stepson. Don't tell him where the truck is." "I wasn't planning to." "That's good. People make mistakes when they think they're still in control." At 6:35, before I had even left the shop, Jake's phone rang. He checked the screen. "Your house camera." I had almost forgotten about the old doorbell system Karen insisted we install after a package went missing the previous Christmas. Jake turned the phone toward me. Ryan stood on my front porch holding 2 Starbucks cups. He rang the bell, waited, then looked toward the driveway. Even through the little screen, I saw the change in his posture. He stepped off the porch and stared at the empty space where the Ford usually sat. "Go home," Torres said. "Act normal. Let him talk." By the time I pulled into the driveway in the Buick, Ryan was standing beside his car. He smiled when I got out, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Morning," he said. "I figured I'd bring you coffee before you headed to the lake." He held out the cup. I took it. "That's thoughtful." His gaze shifted past me. "Where's the truck?" "Made a noise last night. Had it towed." "What kind of noise?" "Hard to say." "Which shop?" I looked down at the label on the cup. Black coffee. He remembered how I took it. That small detail nearly broke something in me. "Why?" I asked. He shrugged. "Just curious." "Jake's looking at it." Ryan's face went still. "Jake started it?" "No." "Did he drive it?" I said it was towed. "Did he inspect the rear brakes?" The question came too fast. For half a second, neither of us spoke. Then I gave him a tired smile. "Ryan, at my age, every noise sounds like it's coming from the rear brakes." He laughed, but it was sharp and brief. "Right, sure." He shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. "Well, maybe it's nothing." "Maybe." He stayed another minute talking about the weather and traffic on Highway 65. I nodded where appropriate. Then he got into his car and closed the door. He didn't leave. He sat there with his phone pressed to his ear, staring through the windshield for nearly 4 minutes. Karen came downstairs while I watched him from the living room window. "Was that Ryan?" "Yes." She looked toward the driveway. "Why was he here so early?" "He thought I'd be driving to the lake." Her face tightened. I turned to her. "The truck was sabotaged." She reached for the back of the chair. "What?" "The brake hose was cut. There was a tracker underneath." Karen shook her head immediately. "No, Ryan wouldn't." "I heard him. He says things when he's upset." He knew exactly where the damage was. Her eyes filled, but I wasn't ready to comfort her. "Daniel, please, we need to think before we destroy his life." I stared at her. "He tried to end mine." The words hung between us. Karen sat down slowly. "He's in trouble," she whispered. "Financial trouble." "How much?" "I don't know." "That isn't an answer." "He borrowed money from people he shouldn't have." "And the papers?" Her eyes dropped. "He said they were temporary loan forms. He needed my signature because his credit was bad." "Where are they?" "He took them." I stepped away from the table. She reached for my sleeve. "I never agreed to hurt you." I believed that part. But belief wasn't the same as trust. Later that afternoon, Torres interviewed Karen separately. When she came back into the room, she looked smaller somehow. She admitted Ryan had asked about my life insurance policy. He had asked whether the house would automatically become hers. He had also wanted to know who controlled the old shop property if I died. By then, Michael had in Branson. He stood near the vending machine in the police station lobby, turning his cap in his hands. "I'm sorry," he said. "You didn't cut the line." "No, but I knew what he was capable of when he was younger. I kept hoping he'd grow out of it." So did I. Torres joined us holding a clear evidence bag containing the tracker. "We have the serial number," she said. "We'll request the purchase and account records." Michael leaned closer to the bag. "That black zip tie," he said. "Ryan uses those in his garage." Torres held up one hand. "Memory helps us ask questions. It doesn't prove anything." Michael nodded. "Understood." That evening, I drove the Buick to the grocery store because we were out of milk. Before I pulled onto the street, I got out and walked around the car. I checked beneath the rear bumper, looked behind both front wheels, pressed the brake pedal 3 times before shifting into reverse. A neighbor waved from across the road. I pretended I had dropped something. That was the part I hated most. Not the fear of Ryan, the way that fear had entered every ordinary thing I did. At 9:15, Torres called. "We traced the tracker purchase," she said. "It was bought 4 months ago with a prepaid card." "That sounds like a dead end." "Maybe the account used a recovery email." I waited. "The email belongs to Karen." I looked across the room at my wife, sitting on the couch with a blanket over her knees. "She says she's never seen the tracker." "She may be telling the truth," Torres said, "but someone had access to her account." Karen looked up at me. I hadn't said a word, but she must have seen the answer on my face. That night, neither Karen nor I slept much. She stayed in the guest bedroom. I stayed in hours, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly above me. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up, walked into the kitchen, and made coffee that tasted like burnt dirt. Karen came downstairs 20 minutes later wearing one of my old Cardinal sweatshirts. Neither of us apologized. Neither of us knew how. She stood by the sink with both hands wrapped around a mug. I didn't know, she said quietly. I looked at her over the rim of my cup. I believe you. She let out a shaky breath. But you still signed things you didn't understand. Her shoulders dropped. I know. We sat in silence until the clock over the stove clicked to 6. Finally, I said, "We're meeting Rebecca this morning." She nodded without asking why. Rebecca Sloan had handled my legal work for almost 25 years. She helped me sell Mercer Auto and Towing, set up my retirement accounts, and write my will after my first wife died. If there was one person I trusted besides Jake, it was Rebecca. Her office sat in a red brick building just off South National Avenue. The receptionist greeted us by name. Rebecca looked up as we walked in. She frowned immediately. "Daniel, I wish this were a social visit." I figured. She motioned us inside. The office still smelled faintly of leather and coffee. The same framed fishing photo still hung behind her desk. She waited until we sat down. "What happened?" I told her everything. Not dramatically. Just the facts. She listened without interrupting, occasionally writing notes in the margin of a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she folded her hands. "First question." She looked directly at Karen. "Did Ryan ever ask detailed questions about Daniel's estate?" Karen nodded slowly. "I thought he was trying to learn." "What exactly did he ask?" "He wanted to know what happened if Daniel died first." Rebecca wrote something down. "Anything else?" "He asked about life insurance." "The house." "The repair shop." I watched Rebecca's expression change. Not fear. Recognition. She opened my file cabinet drawer. "Let's go through this carefully." For the next hour, she spread documents across the conference table. Will, trust, property deeds, insurance, retirement accounts. She explained each one in plain English. "If Daniel dies today," she said, "Karen receives the life insurance." Karen looked sick. Rebecca continued. "You also become sole owner of the marital home because of how the deed is written." She slid another document forward. "The old repair shop is different." I leaned forward. "How?" "You never transferred ownership after selling the business." "I kept the land." "Correct." She tapped the page. "That property remains yours." Karen looked confused. "So Ryan wouldn't automatically inherit it?" Rebecca almost smiled. "No, he'd inherit nothing directly." I frowned. "Then why would he do all this?" Rebecca answered before Karen could. "Because he never needed to inherit directly." She looked toward Karen. "If you receive the insurance money," Karen finished the sentence herself. "I could give it to Ryan." Rebecca nodded. "And if he convinced you to transfer the repair shop property afterward," everything suddenly fit together. Ryan wasn't trying to inherit. He was trying to inherit through Karen. Rebecca wasn't finished. "What paperwork did Ryan ask you to sign?" Karen opened her purse. "I found these." She handed over a thick manila folder. "I found it under Ryan's old desk when I cleaned yesterday." Rebecca emptied the folder. "Loan applications, bank forms, insurance paperwork." Then she stopped. She pulled out 3 pages and placed them separately. "What are these?" Karen leaned closer. "I've never seen those." "They contain your signature." Karen frowned. "That's my signature." Rebecca pointed higher on the page. "Look at the initials." Karen blinked. "They aren't mine." Rebecca nodded. "Your signature appears genuine." She lifted another page. "But these initials were written by someone else." Page after page revealed the same thing. Ryan had mixed legitimate documents with fraudulent ones. Karen had signed the final pages while trusting what he told her. Earlier pages had quietly been swapped. Rebecca sighed. "I've seen this before." Karen covered her mouth. "Oh, God. There appears to be a limited power of attorney." "For who?" "Ryan." Karen stared blankly. "I never agreed to that." "I believe you." Rebecca pointed farther down. "There is also authorization giving Ryan temporary access to one of your investment accounts." Karen looked like someone had knocked the air out of her. "I don't even remember opening that account." Rebecca continued reading. "There's another draft agreement." She looked at me. "It grants Ryan partial ownership rights in your old repair shop property." I laughed once. Not because anything was funny. Because it was unbelievable. "He doesn't own 1 square inch." Rebecca nodded. "No, but someone expected him to." Karen whispered, "He used me." I turned toward her. "Yes. For years, I thought he only manipulated me." She closed her eyes. "I never imagined." She couldn't finish. Rebecca quietly slid the forged papers into a separate folder. "I'm turning copies over to Detective Torres." Karen didn't argue. Instead, she asked the question that mattered. "Can any of this be fixed?" Rebecca leaned back. "Yes, but we need to move today." She outlined everything calmly. The repair shop property could be transferred into a protected trust. My life insurance beneficiary could be updated. Karen could revoke every authorization Ryan had tricked her into signing. Every financial door Ryan expected to walk through could be locked. For the first time in 2 days, I felt something besides fear. Control. You. That afternoon, Detective Torres called. We've made progress. What kind? The GPS account. She explained that the prepaid card itself revealed almost nothing. But the tracker regularly uploaded its location through an online account. That account had been accessed repeatedly from Ryan's cell phone. Not proof by itself. But another piece. Then she added something else. A neighbor's security camera captured someone crouching beside your truck Thursday night. Can you identify him? No. The image is too dark. So it doesn't help much. It helps establish timing. I appreciated her honesty. She never exaggerated. She only stacked facts, one by one. Later that evening, Michael drove back up from Branson. He brought fried chicken from a little place outside Ozark because, in his words, nobody should make legal decisions hungry. We sat above my old repair shop in the tiny apartment I'd used years ago when snowstorms made driving home impossible. It hadn't changed much. Old recliner, small television, coffee maker older than most pickup trucks. The stairs had nearly finished my knees. Michael noticed. You all right? I'll feel it tomorrow. He nodded knowingly. Me too. For a while we simply ate. Finally he spoke. When Ryan was 19, I looked up. He stole checks from me. I hadn't expected that. I almost filed charges. What stopped you? Karen. He smiled sadly. She begged me. What happened? I believed one more chance would fix him. I looked at my paper plate. I did the same thing. Michael shook his head slowly. We kept calling it mercy. He looked out the apartment window toward the empty parking lot. He learned to call it permission. Neither of us spoke for almost a minute. Then my phone buzzed. It was Rebecca. I finished the trust paperwork, she said. So quickly? I didn't want Ryan getting ahead of us. What now? You come sign tomorrow morning. And after that? She smiled through the phone. After that? He'll never touch your property. I thought the day couldn't surprise me again. Then Rebecca added one last sentence. Daniel, I also received a phone call from a commercial developer. What about? They said Ryan already promised to sell them your repair shop property. My stomach tightened. He accepted a $15,000 advance. I looked across the room at Michael. He already knew from my face something had changed. Ryan hadn't been hoping I'd die someday. He had already started spending money from a future he believed was only days away. By Tuesday afternoon, my old life had been packed into 2 duffel bags and a cardboard box. The apartment above Mercer Auto and Towing wasn't much to look at, but it gave me something I hadn't felt since walking through my garage door 4 days earlier. Peace. The refrigerator rattled every time it kicked on. The carpet was older than some of the mechanics working downstairs. The shower took nearly 2 minutes before the hot water reached the second floor. It wasn't comfortable. But every night I locked one door instead of wondering who might be standing on the other side. That alone was worth a lot. Detective Elena Torres stopped by the shop Wednesday morning. She didn't bring good news. We're making progress, she said, but this isn't a television show. I smiled. I figured. The brake damage is real. I know. The tracker is real. I know. She folded her arms. But neither one automatically proves Ryan installed them. So we're still building. Exactly. She explained that the prepaid card, the tracker account, Karen's statements, the damaged brake line, and the surveillance footage all pointed in the same direction. But prosecutors preferred complete puzzles, not loose pieces. We're close, she said. How close? I won't guess. That answer frustrated me. It also made me trust her more. Maybe. Ryan, on the other hand, seemed to believe he'd already won. Wednesday evening, my phone rang. His name appeared on the screen. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. Hey, Daniel. I noticed he hadn't called me Dad in years. What's up? You feeling better? I'm getting there. I heard you've been acting nervous. I didn't answer. He chuckled. Karen worries too much. I'm sure she does. You know, his voice softened. Memory changes when people get older. There it was. Not a threat. Not an accusation. A seat. You probably imagine half of whatever scared you. I looked out the apartment window toward the empty parking lot below. You think so? I mean, he laughed lightly. You've been forgetting little things lately. My glasses. My appointments. The TV remote. I forget where I leave my coffee sometimes. So do I. He kept talking. My buddy's grandfather started seeing things before they diagnosed dementia. There was no anger in my chest. Only clarity. Ryan wasn't just trying to kill me. He had been preparing a backup story. If I survived, I would simply become an old man who couldn't remember reality correctly. I appreciate your concern, I said. You always look out for me. The line went quiet. Then he answered carefully. I still do. When we hung up, I sat perfectly still for almost a minute. That conversation frightened me more than hearing about the brake line, because it proved planning. Thursday morning, Rebecca called. The trust paperwork is ready. I drove across town. My knees complained every time I climbed stairs, but I refused to let anyone carry my briefcase. Rebecca already had everything spread across her conference table. She pointed to the documents one by one. The repair shop property is now protected. She slid another page toward me. Your life insurance beneficiary has changed. Karen looked up. I'm not receiving it anymore? Rebecca smiled gently. The trust will. Karen looked hurt. I reached across the table. This isn't punishment. She nodded. I know. If something happens to me, I squeezed her hand. You'll still be taken care of. But no one else gets to pressure you into giving everything away. Karen wiped her eyes. For the first time in years, someone's protecting me from Ryan. Rebecca handed me one last document. This officially revokes every financial authorization he tricked Karen into signing. I signed each page slowly. 40 years building a business. One afternoon protecting it. That evening, Karen called. Ryan keeps asking questions. What kind? He wants to know why you're staying at the shop. What did you tell him? That you needed space. He believes you? I think he wants to. She hesitated. He's planning something Saturday. The cookout? Yes. He keeps telling everyone he's making an announcement. I already knew. Rebecca had told me about the commercial developer. Ryan honestly believed he was about to become owner of my old property. Karen lowered her voice. Daniel, I think he's excited. About what? I think, she swallowed. He believes everything is finally working. I closed my eyes. That sentence stayed with me. Not because I pitied Ryan, because I realized how deeply he'd convinced himself that my death wasn't murder. It was a business opportunity. No. Friday afternoon, Michael stopped by. He carried a tackle box. You fishing? I asked. No. He opened it. Inside wasn't fishing gear. It held every photograph he'd taken beneath my truck. Brake line, tracker, frame, close-ups, wide shots. Every angle. I figured Detective Torres has copies. She does. So why bring these? He looked at me. Because someday, you're going to wonder if this really happened. He handed me the envelope. These are for you. I stared at the photographs. Without them, I might eventually have convinced myself I'd exaggerated. That age had made me dramatic. Instead, there it was. Steel. Rubber. A clean cut. Cold proof. Yeah. Saturday arrived warm and bright. Perfect barbecue weather. Exactly the kind of afternoon families in southwest Missouri waited for all spring. By noon, Ryan's backyard looked ready for a neighborhood block party. Pickup trucks lined both sides of the street. Children chased each other with water balloons. Country music drifted over the privacy fence. Someone laughed loud enough for 3 houses to hear. I parked half a block away. Not because I was nervous. Because Detective Torres had asked me to. She wanted everything to unfold naturally. Michael met me on the sidewalk. You ready? No. Good. I looked at him. If you were ready for something like this, I'd worry about you. We walked toward the backyard together. Ryan spotted us immediately. His grin spread across his face. There he is. He raised a plastic cup. Everybody. Daniel finally decided to join us. Several relatives waved. A few looked uncomfortable. Ryan walked over and slapped my shoulder like we were old friends. You picked the perfect day. Did I? I've got some exciting news. I've heard. He laughed. Business is finally taking off. I hope you didn't spend the money yet. His smile flickered. What do you mean? Oh, I shrugged. Nothing. He studied my face for a second, then forced another grin. You'll see. As we reached the patio, he climbed onto the small wooden deck, holding a folder. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been working on something big. Everyone turned toward him. He opened the folder dramatically. Just then, the folding table beside the grill collapsed. A pan of baked beans slid onto the grass. A stack of presentation boards scattered across the patio. One uncle laughed. Well, that's one way to make an entrance. Several people chuckled. Ryan didn't. He hurried to gather the papers. I waited until the yard grew quiet again. Then I asked one simple question. Ryan, he looked up. Before you tell everybody about your new business, shouldn't you actually own the land first? The smile disappeared from his face. For the first time all week, I saw uncertainty. Real uncertainty. He slowly reached for the folder beside his feet. Actually, I brought the paperwork. Before he could pull it out, Karen stood up from her chair. She was holding a thick manila envelope. I have the original paperwork. The backyard fell silent. At that exact moment, the side gate opened. Detective Elena Torres stepped inside. Behind her came 2 uniformed officers. Ryan's face turned completely white. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The country song playing through Ryan's Bluetooth speaker kept going, completely unaware that 20 people had forgotten how to breathe. Ryan looked from Karen to Detective Torres, then to me. He forced out a laugh. What's this supposed to be? Torres stepped forward, her tone calm and professional. Ryan Collins? He straightened his shoulders. Yeah. I'm Detective Elena Torres with the Springfield Police Department. Ryan glanced around at the family. Seriously? Do you mind telling me what's going on? I'd be happy to, she replied. But first, I'd like you to keep your hands where I can see them. A couple of the children stopped chasing each other and wandered toward the adults before an aunt quietly led them back toward the front yard. Nobody wanted them hearing what came next. Ryan shook his head and laughed again, louder this time. This is unbelievable. He pointed toward me. Daniel, did you actually call the cops because your truck needed repairs? I didn't answer right away. I simply looked at him. For years, I'd imagined what I'd say if Ryan ever crossed a line he couldn't come back from. None of those speeches seemed important anymore. I called the police, I said quietly, because someone tried to make sure I never came home again. Ryan rolled his eyes dramatically. Oh, come on. My truck was damaged. Old trucks break. The brake hose didn't. His jaw tightened. Detective Torres nodded toward one of the officers. He stepped forward carrying a large evidence envelope. Ryan watched it without speaking. Torres continued. Mr. Collins, before we go any further, I'd like to give you an opportunity to explain something. What? She removed several photographs from the envelope. The first showed the underside of my truck. The second showed the partially sliced brake hose. The third showed the GPS tracker attached to the frame. Ryan barely glanced at them. I don't know anything about that. Michael took one slow step forward. I do. Every head turned toward him. Ryan's face hardened. You don't know anything. Michael ignored him. I spent 42 years repairing diesel trucks. He pointed toward the photograph. That brake hose didn't wear out. It didn't crack from age. It didn't fail on its own. He looked directly at Ryan. Somebody cut it. Ryan folded his arms. So? So don't insult everybody here by pretending that's normal. Ryan shrugged. Anybody could have done it. Torres nodded. That's true. Forensic evidence is never based on one thing. She looked toward me. Mr. Mercer, would you explain why your truck wasn't in your driveway Friday morning? I stepped closer. I came home early Thursday afternoon. Ryan's eyes narrowed. I heard you talking to Karen. His face didn't change. You don't know what you heard. I know exactly what I heard. I think you're confused. There it was again. Confused. Old, forgetful. Exactly the story he'd been preparing. I smiled sadly. You've been calling me confused for days. Ryan shrugged. You've been acting that way. I suppose that's why you asked whether Jake inspected the rear brakes. For the first time, Ryan hesitated. Only for a heartbeat. But everyone saw it. My cousin Linda frowned. What rear brakes? Ryan quickly answered. I was just asking. Really? I nodded toward him. You asked whether the truck had been started. You asked whether anyone had driven it. You asked whether the rear brake line had been checked. I never mentioned brakes. Silence. One uncle slowly lowered his paper plate. Ryan looked around. You people actually believe this? Karen stood. Her hands were trembling so badly she nearly dropped the manila envelope. I do. Ryan stared at her. Mom! No. Her voice cracked. No more. She walked toward Detective Torres. I found these. Torres accepted the envelope and removed several documents. Karen looked at the family instead of Ryan. I thought I was signing loan papers. I wasn't. I trusted my son. She began crying. He mixed fake pages into real paperwork. Ryan stepped toward her. Mom, don't! She backed away. You forged my initials. I can explain. You used my email. I was helping you. You lied. I was protecting us. Karen shook her head. No. You were protecting yourself. The backyard had become so quiet I could hear burgers sizzling on the unattended grill. Ryan looked desperate now. He pointed at me. He's turning you against me. Karen slowly wiped her eyes. No. You did that. She looked at Detective Torres. There's something else. She handed over a small tablet computer. It used to belong to Ryan. I found it in the guest room. Torres nodded toward another officer, who placed the device into an evidence bag. Ryan's breathing became noticeably faster. That's my property, Torres answered calmly. It also appears to contain messages relevant to an ongoing investigation. Ryan looked at me again. What did you tell them? The truth. That's all? It was enough. Rebecca Sloan quietly stepped forward from near the patio door. Most of the relatives hadn't even noticed she'd arrived. Ryan looked completely confused. What is she doing here? Rebecca opened a folder. I'm Daniel Mercer's attorney. Ryan's expression changed again. You don't need a lawyer. No, Rebecca replied. You did. She held up a certified copy of several documents. Earlier this week, Mr. Mercer transferred the former Mercer auto property into an irrevocable trust. Ryan blinked. What? The property can no longer be transferred to you. He stared at the papers. No. The trust also protects the land from unauthorized sale. No. The developer you accepted $15,000 from has already been informed. Ryan's face drained of color. You talked to them? Rebecca nodded. They're requesting their money back. Ryan looked as if someone had punched him. Everything he planned, every dollar he'd already spent in his mind, vanished in less than 30 seconds. He turned toward me. You did this. No. I shook my head. You did. You planned my funeral around land that was never yours. Ryan looked wildly around the yard, searching for someone, anyone, to agree with him. Nobody spoke. Finally, he pointed at Michael. You were never a father. Michael absorbed the words without flinching. Maybe not. I made plenty of mistakes. But I never taught you to solve debt by burying people. Ryan's shoulders slumped. For just a second, I almost saw the frightened little boy I'd met 20 years earlier. Then it disappeared. He spun toward the house. I'm done. He took 2 quick steps toward the sliding glass door. The 2 officers intercepted him before he reached it. Ryan Collins, Detective Torres said evenly, you are under arrest. One officer gently took hold of his wrist. Ryan pulled once. Not violently, just instinctively. Then he stopped resisting. As the handcuffs clicked shut, he looked past everyone else and found Karen. Mom, she couldn't meet his eyes. Please, I'll pay you back. I'll fix this. You always fix everything. Karen stood perfectly still. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't move toward him. Instead, she whispered, No. The single word carried 20 years of exhaustion. Ryan looked at me next. I expected anger. Instead, I saw confusion. He genuinely couldn't understand why this time had been different. Why this lie hadn't worked. Why this second chance had never come. The officers led him toward the waiting patrol car. As he disappeared through the side gate, the backyard remained silent. Finally, my cousin Frank walked over. He cleared his throat awkwardly. Daniel? I'm sorry. I believed Ryan when he said you were getting forgetful. I nodded. I probably would have believed him too. Frank looked down. I should have called. You don't owe me anything. Maybe not. He extended his hand anyway. I still should have called. I shook it. One by one, other relatives quietly apologized. Not because I'd asked them to. Because they'd watched a lie fall apart in front of their own eyes. Karen walked over after everyone else drifted away. Can we go home? I looked toward our house across town. The place where I'd slept beside her for 15 years. The place where I'd overheard my own death being discussed like a calendar appointment. I love you, I said softly. Fresh tears rolled down her face. I know. But I can't come home tonight. She nodded before I finished. I understand. I need time. You deserve that. For the first time all week, neither of us pretended everything could be fixed with one conversation. Later that evening, I sat alone in the apartment above my old repair shop. The parking lot below was empty. The building creaked the same way it always had after sunset. I poured myself another cup of coffee and finally allowed my shoulders to relax. Then my phone rang. It was the county prosecutor. Mr. Mercer, he said, Ryan is asking about a plea agreement. I closed my eyes. I figured he would. The prosecutor hesitated. There's something else. He says he has information about another plan he never had the chance to carry out. My hand tightened around the phone. I suddenly realized the nightmare might not be over yet. The prosecutor's name was Mark Bell. I had met him once at a Rotary Club luncheon years earlier, back when people still introduced me as the owner of Mercer Auto instead of the retired man who used to own it. That night, his voice was careful. Ryan says the brake damage wasn't his first plan. I set my coffee down. What was? He claims he had been building a record that you were becoming mentally confused. I looked around the apartment, the old recliner, the narrow kitchen, my reading glasses sitting beside the sink. What kind of record? He photographed your prescription bottles. He moved some of them between cabinets. He sent messages to relatives suggesting you were forgetting doses and mixing medications. My stomach turned. Did he change the pills? We have no evidence that he altered the medication itself. That isn't what I asked. Mark paused. Ryan says he switched 2 labels briefly, took photographs, then put them back. I stood too quickly. Pain shot through my knee and forced me to grab the counter. The prosecutor continued. He intended to use the photographs if you reported the truck. His argument would have been that you were confused about your medication and possibly about the condition of your vehicle. I thought about every time Ryan had mentioned my memory. My glasses. The remote. A missed appointment. Small, ordinary mistakes that happen to almost everyone after 60. He had been collecting them like receipts. So if I died, it looked like an accident, I said. And if I lived, I looked senile. That appears to have been the strategy. I walked to the window and stared at the empty parking lot below. The damaged brake line had frightened me. This was different. Ryan had not only planned to remove me, he had planned to erase my credibility first, so nobody would trust me if I survived. Mark explained that Ryan was offering access to old messages and account information in exchange for a plea agreement. The charges would cover the vehicle sabotage, stalking behavior, document fraud, and the attempt on my life. He avoided promising a specific sentence. So what happens now, I asked. If the agreement is accepted, he'll spend most of the next decade in prison. He'll also be responsible for restitution tied to the forged documents and the developer's advance. Do you need me to approve it? No, but your position matters. I considered that. Part of me wanted a trial. I wanted Ryan to sit in a courtroom while every message was read aloud. I wanted strangers to hear how calmly he had discussed the road to Table Rock Lake. Then I imagined spending another year answering questions, attending hearings, and letting him occupy every conversation in my life. I don't need the maximum amount of pain, I said. I need him unable to hurt anyone else. I understand. And I want the financial fraud included. It will be. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I stood alone in that little apartment and realized justice rarely feels the way people expect. There was no rush, no sense of triumph. Mostly I felt tired. Ryan accepted the agreement 6 weeks later. I attended the final hearing but skipped most of the earlier ones. Karen went twice, Michael went once and never returned. When the judge asked Ryan whether he understood the consequences, he answered yes without looking toward us. That was the last time I saw him in person. Karen and I remained separated for 6 months. Some relatives expected me to forgive her immediately because she had eventually helped the police. Others thought I should divorce her and never speak to her again. At 66, I had finally learned that people give very confident advice about pain they do not have to live with. Karen had not planned my death. She had also failed to warn me when she first understood Ryan might be serious. Both things were true. We started meeting every Wednesday morning at a diner on Glenstone Avenue. Neutral ground, vinyl booths, weak coffee, and a waitress who never asked why a married couple arrived in separate cars. During our first meeting, Karen spent 20 minutes apologizing. I stopped her. I don't need a better apology, I said. I need different behavior. She nodded. What does that look like? No hidden accounts, no signing paperwork without reading it, no secret calls with Ryan. If he asks for money, the answer is no. He's my son. I know. Her eyes filled. I can love him and still say no. That's the only way this works. Karen began seeing a counselor and joined a support group for parents of troubled adult children. She told me later that the hardest part was hearing other people describe the same cycle: crisis, rescue, apology, repeat. She had always believed Ryan's situation was unique. It wasn't. She sold a diamond bracelet her mother had left her and used the money to repay part of what Ryan had taken from one investment account. I told her she didn't have to do that. I know, she said, I need to. That mattered more than the amount. When she moved home the following spring, we did not pretend we were returning to the old marriage. We changed passwords, separated several accounts, put all major financial decisions in writing. Romantic? Not especially. Peaceful? More than before. I kept the apartment above the shop. Karen understood. Some people keep a fishing cabin. I kept 2 rooms over an auto garage because they reminded me I would never again be trapped by the fear of leaving home. Michael and I repaired the Ford together. We waited until a cold Saturday in February when the shop was quiet and Jake had no customer vehicles in the rear bay. Michael brought new brake hoses, fittings, fluid, and more tools than we needed. You planning to rebuild the whole truck? I asked. I don't trust your tool organization. I owned this shop before you knew how to use a torque wrench. And yet I still brought my own. We worked slowly. His fingers stiffened in the cold. Mine cramped around smaller fittings. Every 20 minutes, one of us had to straighten up and complain about a different joint. That was the first time I laughed without forcing it since the cookout. When the repair was finished, Michael lowered the truck from the lift. You drive, he said. I looked at the Ford. No. You own it. You drive first. He studied me, then nodded without making a joke. We tested it in the parking lot, then on the service road, then around the block. The brake pedal held firm every time. A week later, I drove alone to the grocery store. 2 weeks after that, I took the highway south with Michael in the passenger seat. At the first stoplight, I pressed the brake pedal twice. He looked down. You planning to inspect the entire truck or actually go fishing? At our age, those are the same activity. He laughed so hard he started coughing. We made it to Table Rock Lake just before noon. The water was gray and flat. Bare trees lined the shore. We caught nothing worth keeping, which made it a completely normal fishing trip. Sitting there beside Ryan's father, I thought about how strange families can be. Michael and I had spent years politely avoiding each other. He was Karen's former husband. I was the man who helped raise his son. We each carried private opinions about what the other had done wrong. In the end, honesty made us better friends than family obligation ever had. It has been a year now. I still check the brakes more often than necessary. Sometimes I wake up remembering Ryan's voice in the kitchen. Not loud, not angry. That was the worst part. He sounded practical. Healing did not erase that afternoon. It simply stopped that afternoon from owning every morning that followed. For a long time, I thought revenge meant making Ryan feel what he had made me feel. Fear, humiliation, helplessness. I was wrong. The real revenge was living safely in the house he expected to take from me. It was protecting the business property I spent 40 years earning. It was watching Karen learn that love without limits can become permission for cruelty. Most of all, it was refusing to accept Ryan's version of me. I was not confused. I was not disposable. And growing older did not mean I had to surrender my judgment to someone younger, louder, or more ruthless. Age takes certain things from a man: speed, strength, the ability to climb stairs without making a noise you hope nobody heard. But it can also give you clarity. You stop wasting time explaining boundaries to people who benefit from ignoring them.